Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's public safety briefing led by Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, Phil Banks. Following our last speaker, we will take a few questions from the media, followed by some questions that have been submitted by the public ahead of today's briefing. I would now like to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Phil Banks.
So good afternoon and welcome. I believe that we can access this through hearfromeric.com. So we would urge all of the listeners to pass this on to your friends. There, if you sign up, that you will have the opportunity to submit your questions on the topics that you want the administration to answer. And then we ask that you pass it along. So we are trying to build this up because public safety is a joint effort. Today we have actually a really good episode. We're going to have three exciting guests. The first is my peer, my comrade, my fellow Deputy Mayor, Mayor Joshi, and she is the Deputy Mayor for Operations. And she's going to be here, and she's going to talk about safety for cyclists and people who ride e-bikes, scooters, and the likes. And it's going to be a quick refresher on things that we can all do as motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians to keep our roadways safe. Our second guest will be, we're delighted to have the New York City Public Schools Deputy Chancellor, Carolyn Cantina. And she's going to talk about a program that the Department of Education recently released about a week or two ago. They may have been working on it a little bit longer, but they had a big public announcement. I believe it was in Brooklyn a few weeks ago, and it's called New York City Reads. And this is gaining a lot of steam, and they're getting a lot of positive feedback, and we thought it was important for you to understand where they are and where they are going with that. And then finally, we're going to have Deputy Chief Max Talentino. I've known him for a very long time. We worked together for years. He is the commanding officer of the NYPD's Community Affairs Bureau, and he is joined here today by Lieutenant Papalosopoulos, who is the commanding officer of the Crime Prevention Division. And in the hierarchy of the NYPD, the Crime Prevention Division is embedded in the Community Affairs Bureau. So the lieutenant now directly reports to Chief Talentino. And they're going to speak about crime statistics and certainly, more importantly, crime prevention tips, certain things that you could do and we could do as a family to minimize the chances of ourselves being a victim of a crime. So I think it's going to be pretty exciting, interesting. So we're going to start with the Deputy Mayor, and she is going to be talking about e-bikes, traditional bicyclists, scooters, pedestrians, motorists. There's a lot of things going by. We receive a lot of complaints from pedestrians about bicyclists and scooters who ride on sidewalks. And they may ride for a variety of reasons. Some, they could just be disobeying the law. Some may be unaware that it's forbidden to ride on the sidewalks. And others may not feel safe riding in the street. And we just want to put out there with awareness factor. We want people to pay attention. We want to make sure that everybody is safe. The street and the city needs to be safe. So too much ado, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. Before I get started on the topic of bikes, e-bikes, mopeds, scooters, with a focus on e-bikes, I do want to give a brief update on the Staten Island Ferry. At 1 p.m. on Thursday, May 26, we switched over to every hour service on the Staten Island Ferry due to some staffing challenges, and that ran until 11:30 p.m. We continued service using New York City Ferry, and that covered from Pier 11 to St. George overnight, and that was free, and that overlapped from 10:45 p.m. until 6:15 a.m. this morning. This morning, our Staten Island Ferry service returned hourly at 6 a.m., and we're going to return to 30-minute service at 2 p.m. today with continuous service overnight and throughout the weekend. So I want to thank everybody for their patience. I want to thank all the electeds for the outreach that they helped us with on this service. I want to thank New York City Ferry for being our partner to provide continuous service. And as usual, we will keep New York City moving despite challenging circumstances. So to talk a little bit about bikes, especially e-bikes, I think it's important to recognize they're here, they're going to stay, they're growing. There's so many advantages to e-bikes. They're a form of transportation for many people throughout the city. They're climate friendly, they're much more affordable than a car, and they help us get to a great, actually secure our place as one of the urban centers with the lowest car ownership, because it's another form of transportation that lets you get miles without having to take on the onerous burden of owning a car. So we want to support bike riders, especially e-bike riders, but it's a developing industry, and there are some significant risks that without taking precautions can threaten the viability of the industry. And I want to start out with two aspects of e-bikes that I think are really important for us to know. It matters what you buy when it comes to e-bikes. There are safe e-bikes and there are unsafe e-bikes. It's a new industry, and so all of the safeguards that are attendant with new and blossoming industries are not in place. So what you see above you is a UL certification. When this is on an e-bike, it shows you that it has passed all the safety certifications that are necessary and that make it a safe piece of equipment for you to use. It should be on the bike, and it should also be on the battery. Some of the tragic consequences of not having safe equipment: fires. We have, over the decades, electric fires have been the #1 cause of death in New York City. This year, that changed. The #1 cause of death by fire is e-bike fires. We've had 9 deaths since the start of the year. 84 fires in the city have been caused by e-bikes, illegal e-bikes as we call them, those that are not UL certified, and 62 injuries. So it's incredibly important to understand the equipment that you're using. The second is on crashes. E-bikes go faster than normal bikes, and they take a little getting used to, and sometimes they rev up quickly. So we've seen a 17% increase in fatalities involving e-bikes and other e-mobilities. And across the city, there have been 8 e-bike fatalities. 4 of them are what we call single equipment fatalities. Often that is someone crashing into a parked car, a wall, or some other object, and often that's due to speed. So it's really important to understand that an excellent form of transportation, but it comes with some risks. The equipment has to be safe, and you have to be safe in operating it. A few tips in buying: make sure you're looking for that UL certification. Do not buy equipment that doesn't have it. Don't mix and match equipment. If you buy a bike that comes from one company, don't match it with a battery that comes from another. That increases the risk of fires. Don't buy refurbished e-bikes. Buy legal e-bikes. And if you're charging them, charging them in your home. Make sure you're not charging them anywhere near where it would block your ability to leave your residence. Don't mix and match, again, the batteries. That is detrimental when it comes to charging and causes fire. And don't tinker with the speed. Many of the e-bikes are throttled down to go to a maximum amount of speed, but people sometimes tinker with them to get increased speed. And I think the administration and we all understand that often e-bikes are the equipment that people need to earn a living in the delivery world. So it's a real economic choice when it comes to spending extra money to buy a safe piece of equipment or not. And it's a real decision about what you're going to pay for that month, because there is a significant difference between the cost of the legal, safe equipment and the illegal, unsafe equipment. But your life is worth it. The hundreds of dollars difference, and sometimes it's between $200 and $400 difference, is meaningful. It is meaningful because it means you get to come home to your family after a day of work. And it's an investment that you will all appreciate, understand, and I really encourage everyone to think strongly about that when they're purchasing e-bikes. When it comes to riding, don't speed. Ride in the bike lanes. If there are no bike lanes, ride in the same direction as the traffic. You have the right to ride in the traffic as if you are a car. Make sure you're reading the signs. They apply to you. Red lights are red lights for cars, for regular bicycles, for e-bikes, for mopeds, for motorcycles. They apply to all of us. Distracted driving is just as much of a problem for people driving a car as it is for someone on an e-bike who's got their phone in front of them. So make sure you're mindful of that as well. Make sure you're wearing protective gear. That's helmets, reflective gear. Use your bells horns, honks, even your voice if you need to make sure people know that you're in the right of way. And one question we get a lot is, can e-bikes be in parks? Currently, that is not allowed, but the Parks Department is piloting using the ability for people to use e-bikes on some of the main driveways within our parks and along the sides of the river on the east and west side. So I encourage everybody to continue to be helping us be one of the nation's largest biking city, but be wise about how you do that, be wise about how you spend your money, and be wise about how you actually operate the bicycle. What we're doing at the city level is we're pushing for federal mandates so that there's more safety certifications on e-bikes, and there's more safe equipment in the market, which will ultimately drive the price down and make it accessible for everybody. We're applying for federal dollars to ensure that there's secure e-bike parking in NYCHA facilities as well as secure charging. We're doing more to get bike infrastructure out there for delivery workers. This is their office space. Protected bike lanes are the way we keep them protected. And we're working with the apps to make sure they do everything they can do, ensuring that they're raising awareness among the delivery workers they work with, funding and subsidizing the cost of safe equipment. And long ago, before everyone could order food from their phone, and e-bikes were used by restaurants, the restaurants would often keep and store the bikes. Now that economic burden falls on the delivery worker, and that's often why they're making the choice to buy substandard equipment. So we're working with the apps to try to even that out so that the workers are not taking a financial hit while they get safer equipment. So I would like to continue on to just make sure people understand that we're a city for every mode. That's walking, cars, e-bikes, bicycles, mopeds, and motorcycles. But we're a dense city. We have a few basic rules to follow. They apply to everyone. They're not difficult to follow, but they sure save lives. So take the time out. Think about your neighbors. Think about who you share the road with so that we all get to go home safely. Thank you.
That was a lot of information. That was fantastic. I really appreciate that. I just want to reiterate a couple of points. A couple of weeks ago, we had the Fire Commissioner, Laura Kavanaugh, on, and she spoke about the safety of these lithium batteries and these e-bikes. Now you have the Deputy Mayor on for operations, who's basically giving you a lot more, but that same information. One, do not buy these subpar parts. The $2 that you save, right, it's costing you in the future. It is now the number one cause of fires in New York City, and it is totally unavoidable that's taking place. So you ask any of these families, or these people who have lost loved ones, was the $2 or the $3 or the $5 they saved, was it worth it? And the answer is no. Do not have them in your area of regress. What does that mean? If you have to get out of your house quickly, what is that path that you would use, and is there anything in your way, particularly where the source of the fire is going to be? 3, do not charge the batteries overnight. And then the Deputy Mayor, I really appreciate that too, because we've become a society, like we're into these phones, and we're into our tablets, and we're driving and we're texting, and we're driving and we're watching YouTube or some other type of reading our emails, and we're on our bicycles. These are unavoidable things. And I really appreciate how you said it. This is a city for all, right? And just a few laws that we can follow, that it could be safe for all of us. This is an easy one. So we're doing our best to give the education here. We're asking that you follow it. We're asking that you pass it along. We're asking that you participate in it, because the life or the injury that you save may be your own. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Next up, we're going to hear from the Deputy Chancellor. And interestingly, people would ask is that, well, what does the DOE have to do with public safety? I would argue everything to do with public safety. There are studies that over and over have shown is that if you take the area codes, the zip codes, I should say the zip codes of certain areas, and look at their reading level, you can actually predict the crime and the amount of people who are going to commit crimes in those areas. There was a direct correlation between education and public safety. So we had a big announcement 2 weeks ago, right? There's a lot of things that was said. So can you please tell our audience exactly what is New York City Reads? Why are we doing it? What is the objective? And why is the DOE so happy about this program.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If you walk into the Chancellor's office, there's always a quote on his board that says, "If you learn to read, you will be forever free," Frederick Douglass. Reading for us is about empowerment and access. And if you think about it, reading is a part of everything that we do. So whether you're reading a map, a recipe, signs at a train station, or medical instructions, people need to have functional levels of literacy in order to be able to navigate the world safely. We know that there's a strong correlation between reading and promotion of health. And we know that there's a strong correlation between being able to read and involvement in the criminal justice system, as you just mentioned. In fact, 85% of our young people who are involved in the criminal justice system are considered functionally low literate. And they're more likely to drop out. And then that creates this cycle, this detrimental cycle. And so we want to make sure that we're addressing that. Just yesterday, we visited actually an advanced manufacturing lab, and we learned that there is a need for people to actually staff manufacturing labs, and that part of what's keeping people out of really viable options for employment are reading and math levels. And so, an industry like Intel that is looking for 3,000 new employees cannot employ because they don't have folks who can read at a level that they need in there. And so that's part of what we want to be able to address. And so imagine if, in the criminal justice system, we talk about, the involvement and the low literacy levels, if we had been able to give those young people the resources and interventions that they needed early on. And so that's part of what this initiative is aiming to do. We're looking at providing our teachers with a strong curriculum and with the training that they need and the resources that they need in order to be able to teach every child to read. So our chancellor often likes to say that we've been giving teachers a flawed playbook, that we had provided them with instruction that was about cueing kids into reading, using context clues, memorizing, and building a love of reading as a reason to learn to read. And we absolutely want kids to love to read, but we need them to know how to do it mechanically. And so we're going back to a foundational approach to reading that is grounded in the science of reading, and that's what this big announcement was about. So that if our kids learn to do this with confidence and competence and really develop that sense of self-efficacy, then they'll love reading. So we're giving teachers the right playbook, and we're beginning with birth through graduation. So our early childhood is adopting the creative curriculum. Our chancellor often talks about having bright starts to bold futures, and so early childhood will be the beginning of this work. Teachers will be provided with training, our leaders will as well, so that we can set up our youngest learners for success and have them enter into the school system prepared for learning to read. And then over the next 2 years, in our grades K through 5, we're going to be rolling out an option of one of 3 curricula that have already been vetted. And so our superintendents with their communities have selected the curricula. We'll start with 15 districts this year and the remaining districts next year. And in the secondary grades, we're going to continue to boost up our work using screeners and providing interventions for our readers. And we're working with teachers to learn to implement reading strategies across the content areas. So that means in their social studies, in their science, in their math classes. We'll keep building up those skills until we roll out curriculum in each of those as well. Additionally, we're going to let folks work together. And what this does is it actually enables our districts to be able to move in to provide more targeted support because they know exactly what each school is teaching. And it allows our central office to provide support so that teachers can really respond to the kids in front of them. So we can focus on providing supports to our teachers of English language learners. We can provide support to our teachers of students with disabilities so that they know exactly how to target their needs because we already know what curriculum they're using and just need to provide the supports to be able to give them each access. We know that our educators are at the heart of making NYC Reads work, and so we're investing heavily in them. In fact, most of our investment in terms of time and resources will be on developing teachers, and that looks like not only trainings that we already started this past week, but also will look like coaching and supports inside the schools And we know that the more that our kids can read and that the more that they engage in school and that they find joy in being in school, the less time that they're going to spend out on the streets, and the less time that we have to worry about kids being put in dangerous situations. So we're really excited about what NYC Reads means for our city and what it means for all of us as a society. So thank you.
Now, almost, right? I'm going to be clear, almost anything associated with the DOE is very political. It can be very emotional. We're talking about children. So I know you have the UFT, you have parents there. Were they part of this process? Or are they in on the buy-in? Are they objecting to this particular process, or are we all on one team here?
So that's actually part of what's really remarkable about this move is that you're right. Typically, we have folks that we have to negotiate and that are at odds with each other. But in this case, our labor partners have been asking for this kind of support. And so UFT is part of the training as well. They're standing with us side by side. The President Michael Mulgrew and Chancellor David Banks have been in on this together, and I think it's really, really exciting to know that that means that we're going to support schools together to make sure that all of our kids can read, because all of our teachers know how to teach reading. And so actually working really well together. Our parents, believe it or not, wanted to be much more involved than they have been. And so we're gonna make sure that we do that from as we continue along this process. We're gonna be offering trainings for our parents and make sure that we have resources available for them so that parents can continue to support outside of school as well. And then there's the out of school time. So really thinking about how do we now engage those after school providers. So working with DYCD and working with our community-based organizations to make sure that everyone is speaking the same language, that we're all trained and we're all supporting, because reading is how we empower our young people.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. It's very exciting. We'd love to have you come back on and give us an update in the future to see how it's going.
It's great.
But I do know that the Chancellor is very excited behind this. You appear to be very excited behind it.
I am. I'm thrilled.
And I'm sure that it's going to have a real positive impact on New York City. So good luck and congratulations on that. Okay, so now we're going to turn to the NYPD. We have Deputy Chief Talentino here, Commanding Officer of the Community Affairs Bureau. Right, the Crime Prevention Division is a unit under the Community Affairs. And Max, you're going to be talking about, Chief, you're going to be talking about some crime statistics, and more importantly, we're going to get into some of the things that people can do, right, to minimize their chances of being a victim of a crime. And before we hear from the Chief, it's something that I think we agree upon, is that I used to always say when I was in law enforcement, is that you stand out there and you cite statistics. Statistic is a good gauge. It's a measurement. It kind of tells you if you're going in the right direction. But if you are speaking about statistics to someone who was a victim of a robbery, your statistics don't mean anything at all. So I never was applauded, oh, we're down in crime, because there still were crime victims out there who were a victim of a crime. And because you're not a victim today does not mean you cannot be a victim tomorrow. This is, once again, one thing as a city, right? This is nothing that we need to be on different aisles, different sides of the aisle about. This is things that we can work together as a city to keep ourselves safe. And I don't think there's too many people who can argue with that. So Chief, tell me about some crime stats and tell our audience on what they can do to protect themselves.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And again, 1,000% I agree with you. If you're the victim of a crime, statistics really don't mean much. So far this year, the NYPD, the city's up 1.5% in 7 major crimes in New York City. That increase is led by the grand larceny autos and assaults that are occurring out in the street. So, but if you look at the overall picture, murder is down, rape is down, robberies are down, burglaries are down, grand larcenies are down. And we'll go further into the crimes that are up as we go further. I'm happy to report that we have 138 less shooting victims in New York City, and that's an important number. But we want you to be safe out in the street. So if a commotion breaks out in the street and you're nearby, run, seek cover. Don't wait for guns to come out and for people to start shooting. We do not want you to be an unintended victim of unnecessary violence that occurs out in the field. With sexual assaults, while sexual assaults are down, and I know how traumatic that can be for someone who's sexually assaulted. And when you feel comfortable, one of the most important things that you're going to do is try not to destroy any type of evidence by either washing your hands or removing article of clothing. When you feel comfortable, call 911 and report it as soon as possible. It's time is of the essence. When it comes to robberies, robberies are down, as I stated. If what you don't want to do is go out into the street and carrying large sums of money. Carry what you need. In today's day and age, one credit card, one debit card is really all that you need to be out there. But when you do go out there, you got to trust your instincts. When you see something happening around you, there's a you have gut feeling. Change direction. Go into a crowded area. Don't make yourself an easy target. Too many times we see individuals bury their heads into their phones, and you can't do that these days. You have to physically look around at all time constantly. And if you are going to use your phone, find a safe place to do so in order to carry out your business. And even then, pick your head up and look around as you're doing so. Like I said, walk in well-lit areas and be aware of your surroundings, the most important thing that you're going to do. With assaults are up 8%. And we understand that a lot of these assaults, about 40% of these assaults are associated with domestic violence. And we take those type of incidents very seriously. In those cases, we know the perpetrator, and so the apprehension is very, very simple. I can tell you that if you get into an argument with somebody, the best solution to not being the victim of an assault is to de-escalate and walk away and go and change direction. Sometimes at the end of a fight, you start thinking about what led to that fight, and you're going to realize there's something trivial. We don't want you to be a victim of assault. When it comes to burglaries are down overall throughout the city. And one of the most important things that you're going to do is to secure your home, is to make sure that those windows and doors are locked. If you can afford a gate on your fire escape window, please put a gate on there. If you can't afford a gate, find yourself a nice piece of 2x4 and insert it so that the window cannot be lifted. Burglars always look for the easiest path into your house. All right, if you have any type of ladders at home, out by one of your windows or garbage cans, make sure that they're far away and enough so that you're not giving them easy access into your house. When it comes to grand larceny, that's a theft of property from your person without force. Just not carrying your wallet in your front pocket will deter someone from bumping into you and taking your wallet out of your back pocket. But if somebody bumps into you, immediately, take the time to check your belongings and make sure that they're there. And as best as possible, immediately, alert a police officer. Protect yourself at all time when it comes to your personal belonging. One key thing that I will say that when it has to do anything with credit cards and or identifying numbers, whether it's the IMEI number for your phone or your credit card numbers, always somewhere in your house, keep a list of all those numbers. Those numbers are going to be important for the investigation portion. A lot of times we find an individual that's a victim of a grand larceny, of a robbery, and that information is not stored anywhere. It's going to be vital for the purposes of investigating and apprehending the individual. The last thing that I want to talk about, and Lieutenant Papavasopoulos will talk about the grand larceny autos and some of the initiatives that we're taking, is that grand larcenies are up, and that we attribute directly to the TikTok challenge. In a lot of cases, the Hyundais and the Kias are being taken off the street, and many times we're finding these vehicles in other parts of the city. The other car that's being taken is the Honda. The Hondas, for some reason, there's some vulnerability. We're asking folks to go back to some of the old things that worked in years past and maybe put a steering lock device onto your vehicle. It's a great way for you to at least put a deterrence between someone easily taking your car and walking up to your car and realizing there's another step that they got to go through in order to do that. And the last thing I'm going to say is that when possible, please call immediately 911. Don't delay the reporting time, as that's essential for a quick and thorough investigation, and we will apprehend the individual responsible. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Lou, you want to add to that? That was a lot, Chief. Very much appreciated. It's a lot of information, helpful information, useful information. You want to add on to that?
Deputy Mayor, thank you for having me on. The Crime Prevention Division provides a number of services to the citizens and small businesses throughout the city. Some of these, they're all free to the public, and some of these services include lectures that are compromised of basic identity theft, scams. I'm pretty sure everyone here received either an email or a text message stating you possibly owe some money to the IRS in that sort of fashion. What we tell everyone is do not give any of your information away to anyone. Usually, the people that we see more victim to this are our elderlies. So what we encourage is, go back and tell your grandpa or tell your grandfather. My mother was a victim of one of those crimes as well. Other services that we provide are to our small businesses are our security surveys. They're all free of charge. That consists of trained NYPD officers that actually come to the actual business, conduct a detailed assessment of the actual business. They look at the vulnerabilities from camera systems to windows to door locks. And upon completion of that, the actual store owner will receive an NYPD certificate as far as the vulnerabilities are concerned and what they should be looking at with our recommendations. These are some basics from where to apply the cameras, what type of security features. We would assist them in the type of windows that should be included. Going forward, some of these initiatives that we deal directly with the public, again, the mayor's office has provided over 500 Apple AirTags to combat some of these auto larceny initiatives. We've been seeing Kia and Hyundais that were a little bit more prone to the TikTok challenge. We've been seeing an increase in Honda CR-Vs. The NYPD has purchased over 300 additional wheel locks that are providing free to the public that fit that criteria. Our next initiative is going to be on the 16th at Fort Todd, which will be advertised. And if anyone needs any more information on vehicle theft or crime prevention, they could easily go on our website, which is crimeprevention@nypd.org. These AirTags we've distributed over 250 to people. We also had some outside companies that are willing to join the initiative, which is the company called Tile Tracker. They donated over 100 tags to the public as well. And going forward, the summertime is here. I think a lot of traveling is going to be occurring. And what we just want some of the people that are going to be traveling in taxi cabs that say, when you're traveling somewhere and you're getting out of the taxi, just ask the driver to just wait a few seconds while you get into the house. If you're traveling with a group of people, try to stay in well-lit areas and on main streets. So those are just a few of the tips that are free to the public, and they could contact us at any time, and we could actually conduct the actual presentations for them.
Great, excellent. That's a lot of information, a lot of useful information here today. A couple of questions I have is that I'm going to just go over what you said, Chief and Lieutenant. Tile tags, air tags, right? These are devices that you put into your car that in the event that your car is stolen, right, you can actually track, in fact, where the car is at. So you have access to where your car is at all times as well, correct?
Yeah, let me make that clear. The New York City Police Department does not track these devices. These are just given to the public. What the person does.
Or they can purchase it themselves.
Yeah,
right?
they can purchase it themselves as well.
Okay.
They would basically use their phone to coordinate that Apple AirTag and open it. They register it with their own personal phone, and then we encourage them to put it somewhere in the vehicle where it's discreet and it's not visible.
Right. And I know that there's some car services for like a big fee that offer similar type devices, but this is a very inexpensive way. You take one of these tiles, and I'm not pitching one company over the other. You throw it into that particular car. You come out and you find, in fact, that your car is not there. You automatically have access to where your car is in real time or call to 911. My car was stolen. I'm tracking it. It is on the corner of XYZ. It can help us, in fact, relocate your property real quick. So that's something that I would strongly suggest everyone to take a look at. We do have some companies out there that have been donating these. The message to the companies, keep donating. You donated, we're going to get it to the hands. We want more and more and more, and we're going to hand them out as much as possible. But if you can't get a free one, I don't believe they're that expensive. It's somewhat affordable, and if you could afford it, take a look at that. I'm going to go to something you said, Chief, though, is about the home. This was a old telltale sign. If you had to get into your house, how would you break into your own house? You left your key. You have to get access into your house. What would you do? That is the same thing that the bad guy and the bad girl is looking to do as well. Don't have these ladders outside because you're basically telling them to come in. Garbage cans at times can be used that way as well. One of the things that we used to teach was that as you're walking to your door, have your keys out in your hand, ready to go. Don't hold up your pocketbook or going through your pants looking for the key. Have that key out access ability to be able to get in as quick as you possibly can. This Kia and this Hyundai challenge, they cannot operate unless we help them. These criminals out there, they need somewhat our cooperation so we can put up a fight. And it's our job in law enforcement to track it. It's our job in law enforcement to investigate it properly. It's our job in law enforcement to educate the public, and it's your job to take that education and do the best that you can possibly to minimize it. This is a fight that we can win, and this is a fight that we certainly have to win. So it's a lot of good information that was taking place here. I mean, this is like one of the most informative sessions. There was a lot of takeaways from all three, so I just would like to thank the guests, my peers up here, a lot of information, and for the audience that we would just strongly suggest that you process this information, you pass it along to your friends and your family, and then you send us your critique and you send us your questions so that we can, as a team, once again, continue to bridge this gap as we go along our road of public safety. So very good, excellent. Derek, I am going to kick it to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Earlier this week, the administration reached out to New Yorkers, asking them to submit questions for the officials that have joined us here today. We will now get to as many of those as we can with the amount of time that we have left. Our first question comes from Deputy Mayor Joshi. It's from Suvik in Manhattan, who asks, can you explain a little bit more about how traffic light lag works in New York City to keep pedestrians safe for pedestrians across the street? They are very helpful, but I noticed 7th Ave has them, but not all streetlights.
Thank you, and good observations. Not everybody's in tune to exactly how we time traffic lights and how they affect the flow, so I appreciate that. What we try to do with traffic lights is give pedestrians a head start in crossing the street so that they can be more visible to drivers. We do this all over the city. What you've noticed is a difference between 7th Ave and 8th Ave. We do them in phases, so we can certainly check to update on when 7th Ave is going to be time lagged and see how it compares to 8th Ave. But chances are, if you don't see it on 7th Ave, it's because it's coming soon.
Thank you. Next question comes for the Department of Education from Belle Boleyn in the Bronx. She asks, how can we best diagnose students with dyslexia? What are the resources we need to assist these students ASAP? I'm a District 75 teacher, and I believe I have 2 or 3 students that could use resources.
Thank you. I appreciate that question coming from a teacher, too, because it means that we're starting to pay attention to markers in the classroom. And so what our teachers have been doing throughout is using screeners to assess students' development of reading skills. And so those screeners continue to be incredibly important. When we generate data from those screeners, we can find out what exactly does a child need in terms of intervention, and then make sure that they get a cycle of intervention with the right amount of time and the right amount of support. If a child isn't making progress after that intervention, we have intensive interventions and we have what we call secondary screeners so that they can actually assess them for risk of dyslexia. So we don't actually evaluate for dyslexia itself. You would need a neuropsych evaluation for that. But in our school system, we can do a battery of tests and we can use secondary screeners to assess for risk of dyslexia. And if a child does have or does present a risk of dyslexia, there are a number of different resources that are available. We're having teachers trained on different methodologies, Orton-Gillingham method. We also opened this year 4 structured literacy sites, and one of those will become an actual standalone school for students who have print-based disabilities in the Bronx next year. We have one of those sites in Harlem, and we have 2 of those in Brooklyn. We're opening additional sites for next year, many, many more of those, so that we have access to resources across the city. And each district has an academic intervention specialist at the district who can support with this. So if teachers have any concerns, they should bring those up to their principals, and the principals can reach out to their superintendent, who can make sure that those district supports are available too. So we want to make sure that anytime a child needs help, that we have someone who can help make sure that they're getting exactly what they need.
Thank you. Next question comes from for the police department. It's from Katie in the Bronx, who asks, can new police officers visit schools to speak to children about safety?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely. We encourage our officers at every opportunity to engage with members of the community, especially our youth, as they are the future of the city. So it's a great opportunity to expose our young officers to the kids that will someday replace them or replace all of us at City Hall.
Thank you. Next question comes for Deputy Mayor Banks, or we'll send it to Deputy Mayor Banks, from Karen in Manhattan, who says, we see a lot more officers on the street, but is it having an impact on shoplifting?
We see a lot of more officers on the street. Well, that's a good thing. And is it having an impact on shoplifting? I don't know whether or not there's a direct correlation in the situation that you speak of direct, more police having direct on shoplifting. But the administration just released a retail theft plan. And I say the administration, but it was a collaboration from many people inside the administration. Other elected officials, the district attorneys played a great role. The Attorney General, Tish James, played a fantastic role in it. But there were also the retail theft industry played a role. So in this particular case that we are going to see, and we're starting to see the remnants of retail theft, which starting to grasp the problem, is starting to turn another way. Is it directly related to more police? I cannot say that it is. I believe that there are many situations that you do need more police, but there's certainly many situations where less police is better, right? In this particular case here. Now, we do like to see officers going into stores. We do certainly think that the presence outside of these stores are very, very helpful. But in order for the tide to be turned on retail theft, there has to be a collaborative effort among many, the merchants, the district attorneys, certainly the police, the bids that are taking place, and the awareness of the employees and the shoppers itself. So we are going to turn the tide on that. And it's a good question, and I do appreciate it. I don't say that often about the questions, but this was a good question, and I certainly appreciate it. And we're going to, as a city, we're going to combat that problem.
Thank you. The next question comes for Deputy Mayor Joshi from Paola in Staten Island, who asks, what has been the biggest success of Vision Zero? I hear the term a lot, but I'm not entirely sure how it works.
Vision Zero is really about changing culture, and culture is extremely hard to change. But I'm especially proud of the work that's been done in New York City, because we've raised awareness about the importance. And really what the message is speeding kills, cars can be weapons, and we should never put money over safety. How we've done that is in a number of ways. We've done it through enforcement, where we've gotten through the state legislature an enormous amount of authority that we didn't previously have to do automated enforcement against speeders and against people who run red light cameras. We worked hard to make sure that the speed limit in New York City was reduced to 25 miles per hour in many areas. We've done a lot of work in enlarging our exclusive bus lanes and our protected bike lanes and our citywide bike network. We've done a lot of work on redesigning our streets so that it calms traffic. People often say, why are you changing the street like this? It really is to change the pace of the way traffic is moving. We've done an incredible amount of work with our raising the standards for our professional drivers, and they can set the tone for traffic throughout the city. That's a fleet of 100 100,000 drivers that drive Uber and Lyft and taxis. They are some of the safest drivers we have in the city, and they do set the tone. But it really is also about the individual decision that each and every one of us make when we take on a trip in the roadway. And so the education and awareness campaigns that you see around the city are a vital part of that. Getting into the schools and educating children is a vital part. When your kid starts telling you 20 is plenty, you know that we're getting the message across. And also, I want to just raise two other things. You look at something like seatbelts, right? That took time to convince people that putting on a seatbelt was actually a life-saving adventure. And now today, you click it. You get in the car and you click it. The auto manufacturers have made it almost impossible for you not to. So once you start changing the culture about these fundamental safety techniques, you find that the market will follow. And so it's really important for us to do that. Car seats is another example. And so there's so many ways in which we've really worked towards getting to the goal zero. And it's called Vision Zero because the goal remains zero. So any death is one death too many. We made a lot of progress in a few years ago leading up to COVID in reducing our fatalities and serious injuries. And like everywhere else in the nation, when COVID hit, cars were not on the street, a lot of reckless driving ensued. And so like the rest of the nation, our serious injuries and fatalities went up. So we're looking closely at where those trends are. We see the trends in the increase in reckless driving and focusing on how we can get to those reckless drivers through automated enforcement, harsher penalties, and making sure we get after those that continuously offend. They continuously get speeding tickets. They continuously get red lights. And I want to leave on this note. We find with automated enforcement that there isn't a lot of recidivism. If you're caught, you're not going to do that again. It's those that are caught multiple times that are generally the factor behind a rise in serious injuries and fatalities. So we know who that group is, and we really need to focus our efforts on getting to them. But again, this is not something we do single-handedly. We do this as a city, government institutions, private industry, and individuals making a choice that safety matters, that making sure they get home safely and the other people on the road get home safely too. And it's a choice that I think we can all improve on every day as we conduct ourselves in our public space.
Our next question comes for the NYPD. It's from Denise in Manhattan, who asks, does the NYPD increase police presence around drug clinics? There was one in my neighborhood.
In general, we don't necessarily increase police presence there. Obviously, if there's an issue with any particular location, individual precinct commanders will lend attention to those locations. But as a general focus, we don't normally put police officers at those locations.
But if we get calls and we get 311 calls and we get calls to the precinct, then that would spur.
Absolutely, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Great. And our final question comes from Marie in Brooklyn for the Deputy Chancellor, who asks, what is the plan to keep literacy support in secondary schools next year?
Thank you for that question. Our goal is to support all of our learners. And I had mentioned prior that it's from birth all the way up until they graduate. So while we announced recently that we're rolling out curriculum for birth to 5 and for K through 5, grade 5 rather, we are still providing those intervention supports that I'd mentioned. We want to make sure that schools are still using screeners, and we're promoting literacy across the different courses that a child takes in secondary school. So whether you're in 6 through 8 or 9 through 12, and we'll provide training in those spaces. We're also going to be building out some of those structured literacy sites in middle school and high school so that we have spaces where teachers and leaders can learn about what it looks like to provide comprehensive support as a school, and they'll provide training. We'll have outside providers as well as internal folks who will work together to provide training to those spaces to create real sort of spaces for learning so that other schools can visit and they can see the practices that are in place. In addition to that, we are looking at different curricular options, and we'll begin to engage the community in what those curricular options can be for grades 6 through 8 and then for 9 through 12 as well.
On behalf of the Adams administration, I would like to thank everyone for tuning in to today's briefing and wish everyone a safe Memorial Day weekend. We look forward to seeing you all at our next one. Have a great day.
Thank you.